Hi everyone, and welcome to one more episode of the Generalist Story series. India is world's largest democracy and it is the fastest growing major economy. But for global audience, how do you separate the signal from the noise? How do you turn to a spreadsheet of cold numbers into a story that resonates in London, New York, and Mumbai? To answer that, we are honored to have Mr. Nikhil Inamdar with us. With over 15 years of experience across TV, print, and digital media, he is the author of the bestsellers Rokda and Seven Sutras of Innovation. Nikhil is an independent journalist who contributes to the BBC as well. From chronicling the evolution of Indian enterprises to covering the G20, he is one of the most articulate voices on the Indian economy. Nikhil, thank you so much for joining us here.
Thank you, Barcelona. It's a real pleasure to be speaking with you.
So, you report to a global audience. I mean, you have worked across several media houses now and with such a vast experience. So, just wanted to understand initially that when a massive data set drops, whether it's GDP or startup funding, how do you, kind of filter out the noise? How do you distinguish between this matters to the world versus this is just a domestic headline?
Yeah, thank you. It's an interesting question because I think how you approach a data set really depends on what kind of organization you work in. So I guess working for a business news channel which caters to the stock markets and to traders and investors, then, every nitty-gritty down to the last decimal point is important, right? Because, they are potentially sort of using that information to make business decisions. But if you're working for a global news channel or a news outlet, or if you're sort of working for a general news channel, then I think what we are more interested in is to understand the broader context, is to sort of really understand the trend line or the directional sense of where things are going, where an economy is headed. So if, for instance, GDP has continued to slip for 4 quarters or for 8 quarters, we would sort of look at that from a much more macro perspective on how that number is really impacting people on the ground, whether it's impacting consumption, whether it's impacting private investment, what the government is doing about it. But we wouldn't really look at, these data points unless they are outliers to, what's been expected in a very sort of granular fashion. I think that's more for the business news channels.
That really sounds interesting and it's deep. So maybe, as you said, you analyze a lot of things. You analyze companies, you analyze the culture of the companies, you analyze a lot of the fundings, the GDP, the FDIs and all of those. So when you analyze companies with hyper ambitious growth strategies, but there is a lot of intense internal pressure. So as an editor, as a writer, at what point do you find out that the internal culture becomes a bigger story than the market valuation?
Yeah, so, that sort of increasingly tends to happen, right? That while in the beginning, it's all about the numbers, it's all about the funding raised and, the unicorn status and this, that, and the other. But then after that, what? After that, I think really it's about how a company sustains. And for that, people are the most important. And, if you're unable to manage people and if you're unable to make the workplace, a enjoyable place for people to come to, then that honestly sort of after some point, circles back to the bottom line as well, because that growth becomes unsustainable. People leave, the attrition levels have a cost. It also impacts your brand value. I mean, we've had sort of startups who've been in the news for terribly toxic culture. People have the gig economy startups recently, for instance, where you've had workers on the street complaining about the conditions of work and safety concerns and so on. And so culture becomes really, really important because at the end of the day, no matter sort of how hard you try, you cannot separate it into a separate into a different sort of silo. It's all interlinked. And also you have to understand that, when a new industry is sort of come up, when startups have boomed, they also in some sense set the tone, they set the work culture. And if you have founders and sort of big titans of business propagating things like a 70-hour work culture, a 90-hour work culture, constant hustle, constant productivity over mental health and stuff like that, then those are things that need to be questioned. Because at the end of the day, the upside of the valuation is only going to be shared by the founders. It's not going to percolate down to the to the employees, or very little of it will. And so, it is for the journalists and the media to question, the fairness and the ethics of all of it.
Yes, I mean, really, employees do make the organization,
Yeah.
and employee first is should be the first ethic which should be followed in any organization, and then they excel. Yeah. So we'll just move a bit towards your books, your writings, Nikhil. So in your book, Rokda, you have chronicled family businesses. You have covered VC-backed unicorns. And then nowadays, you're actually covering a lot of VC-backed news and the unicorns news and all of those. So do you see a fundamental difference in the signals between the two? I mean, from family businesses to a venture capitalist backed unicorns. So, what does the old guard get right? I mean, about business fundamentals that the new guard actually misses.
Well, I think, there are, I'm sure there are lots of differences, but I think two or three things that really stand out to me the first is patience. I think, the old guard really built businesses with their backs against their walls without easy access to funding. They built businesses brick by brick, ground up. They expanded, often through internal accruals and not, raising, sort of diluting equity and raising, millions of dollars of money and then spending it, however they wanted. They were very prudent and careful with how they spent their money. And literally, these businesses were built to be sustainable long-term businesses, and not to play the valuation game and to be known as a unicorn and, to sort of list with an IPO and cash out. So I think, there was a lot of patience, and that's why many of these old businesses are actually durable businesses. You don't see them floundering and going bust in the manner that startups do. The second, I think, is communication. I mean, and I'm talking about this from purely journalistic perspective. I think the new guys are complete greenhorns in terms of how they approach communications, how they approach internal communication, how they approach communication in social media, the way they interact with the journalists. I think there's a lack of sophistication. I think the sophistication on how you should communicate is missing.
I understand. Yeah, that actually makes sense. So I went through your full profile, and how you have started and how the journey is going. You come from Prime TV, like NDTV, and you have done some kind of documentaries also, like something on Khayal and Gharanas you have done.
Yes.
So yes, I was just watching it. Actually, I am also a music enthusiast, and I would love to watch all sort of documentaries about music. So I wondered, actually, you have covered a lot about tech, you have covered a lot about data, you have covered about music. So it's diverse. I mean, quite curious, Nikhil, to understand that how do you shape yourselves so differently in each of the platforms? I mean, what's the motivation behind it?
Yeah, so I think every journalist has a different trajectory. Some become domain experts, some sort of really deep dive into one sector and become deep, beat reporters. I know of journalists who've spent their lifetimes, covering just the infrastructure sector or covering the Reserve Bank of India. And honestly, that is fantastic because, when you become a beat reporter, you become a subject matter specialist. But there are people like me who have, diverse interests, and I would call myself a generalist. So some days I would like to sort of, write about business, and the next day I'd like sort of, want to write about the state of our cities, or architecture or music. And music is something that I'm particularly passionate about. Culture is something that I like to write about. So I think you really have to mold your career as per your likes and your personality, because if there are various things that interest you and you feel like writing about those various things, then there's no reason why you should stick to sort of doing just one thing. And I think that's really what I've done. Through my career, sort of I've sort of made decisions just with my heart, whatever it is that I enjoy, I do, without really thinking about the repercussions. Of course, you lose some, you win some. So, in the bargain, I may have lost out on becoming a major domain expert, but that's fine, I think.
That's completely okay when you're diverse. I mean, I was going through a lot, as I said, and I was really curious to understand that it's tough to shape yourselves in every sort of background and deliver the best in that.
Thank
Uh,
you.
yeah. So even as I spoke about one of your books, Rokda, there's one more book which you have written. It's Seven Sutras of Innovation. Firstly, the names are very unique, Nikhil. I mean, just the names are so catchy. People would go and people would actually try to see what's there inside.
Yeah.
Uh, in Seven Sutras of Innovation, actually, it looked at disruptors like ISRO. So today we all know that there is a buzzword AI. I mean, everywhere. So what is that litmus test? I mean, what specific data point proves to you that this is the real innovation, not just a marketing deck?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know if there's a litmus test, but I think every time there's a major disruption that's happening in the world, there's a surround sound. There's a buzz around us, and then sort of things sort of hit a crescendo. And I think with AI, there is so much surround sound. I mean, just come to think of it, uh, even from about 2 years ago to now, we've seen news around AI amplified. We've seen our own use of AI tools being amplified, and so that tells you that this is not just a buzz. It's actually something that is shaping our life. I mean, just this week, for instance, we've had the Anthropic CEOs and his comments on basically what the new tool is going to do to software jobs.
Yeah.
We've seen in the quarterly results of the top 5 IT companies how there's been a complete freeze in hiring, and a lot of that is being attributed to AI. So we are seeing that this is this has begun to impact real life uh, all around us. But at the same time, you have to be also, as a journalist, you have to be mindful to be not driving agendas. So if an AI company leader is talking about how AI is going to reshape the world in 2 years, you have to get a counterpoint from somebody who tells you that maybe they are sort of exaggerating things, and actually things may not be as things may not change as quickly as they're proposing that they will. So I think the job of a journalist is to sort of come in as a mediator and really try and separate the reality and the hype, and make sure that your reader is informed with a studied and a balanced perspective about things.
Yeah, I mean, now as I see AI growing, I feel it's like going to become an kind of oxygen for all sort of domains. It has come in defense, it has come in every sector now. Yeah,
But I don't know whether it's going to become an oxygen or whether it's going to take the oxygen away, right? I mean, if
can work otherwise.
yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think we're still too early in the uh, sort of in the AI era to understand the enormity of what it's going to do. Good, bad, ugly. But yeah, we'll find out, I guess.
Yes, of course. From there, actually, we live in a era of hot takes and some sort of character news. But when I read your articles, when I read your reportings, you specialize in deep dives a lot. So public companies actually have started filings Startups have become opaque nowadays. There is no such source where you can actually deep dive and understand what's happening inside. So, when you need an independent source of truth for a private valuation, what are the specific platforms does your newsroom or you rely on to verify the founder's word?
Yeah. So I think everything has to be corroborated, right? Whatever a founder says or anybody says for that matter can't be taken at face value. It has to be corroborated with other data sets, which there are a number of sort of, independent experts, brokerage houses, data companies such as yours, all of which, give us a more macro, sort of zoomed out perspective, and also help us, really sort of double check on, whether a particular claim is actually valid or not. And I think it's really important to do that because, this is a world where, everybody, not just founders, but everybody's selling you a story, everybody's peddling an agenda, and it is absolutely critical that you don't fall for the rosy picture,
Yeah.
and make sure that you try and find the sort of the gaps in the narrative, not not for anything other than for the fact that people who read you need to know what the truth is and not what the hype is.
That really sounds interesting, and it's really a good thing to know. So as we are heading towards ending this, I
Yeah.
want to understand for the young reporters watching this or who are going to watch this, what would be that small piece of advice or maybe that guru mantra which you would give to the aspiring journalists and reporters? Because many do take you as a motivation. Many do actually, take journalists like you as their gurus, and hence I use this word. So, what's your piece of advice for them?
No, no, no. I mean, that's too big a word. Even I'm sort of still learning the ropes of journalism, even after 20 years. Because I think this is a field where you can be a lifelong. You can do it for your entire life and still not sort of master the craft. But what I would say is that, as you said, this is an era of hot takes, right? And journalists should, at least, I mean, you can do all of that in your private life where you're having a dinner table conversation, and you can say whatever you want. But when you're professionally sort of doing the story, it's really important that you cover it from all aspects, which means you spend time investigating what the truth is, go out or into the field, report from the ground. Don't sit at your desk or don't sit in your living room and do the reporting. I think it's really important that if you're in television, you visualize a story, rather than sort of giving out statistics. So, for instance, if you're reporting about Trump, I don't know, sort of bringing down tariffs on India from 50% to 18%.
Yeah.
It's easy for somebody in television to put out a red arrow pointing downwards, but that doesn't tell you the story. What will tell you the story is if you go to a dusty workshop, in a diamond polishing district in Surat, where somebody's decided to open up again because they are again competitive as tariffs have gone down, and not only is it going to benefit them, but it's going to get back the jobs again. And so you paint a picture of how a particular decision is actually sort of changing things on the ground for the better or for the worse. And I think that's really important. The sort of look and feel storytelling rather than just statistics. And this is not restricted just to business journalism. It's the same with war. I mean, uh, when you put out statistics of so many thousand people having died somewhere, it doesn't make an impact. But when you show the pictures of the suffering, that's when something might change within you. And I think that's really important. I think uh, this is journalism is, if you're in television, it's a visual medium. If you're in print, it's still a visual medium in the sense that you have to help the reader visualize, and statistics absolutely don't do that. Of course, so doing real journalism is extremely expensive. It is easy to sit in office and make graphics rather than send reporters out on the field, which is why increasingly most news organizations actually not sending people out on the field. And it is a big challenge for young journalists, but those who get a chance must absolutely do that.
So I'll just sum up to all the young journalists. It's a piece of advice from Nikhil to ensure that the audience sees the real picture. Then only they can empathize. Then only they can understand, and then only the story will make an effect. I think that's it from our end. Thank you so much, Nikhil, for joining us, and thank you so much for sparing your time to join the interaction.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Have a good day. Thank you. Thank you so
much. Okay, bye.
Bye. Bye.